Hello everybody, it's me, Riffraff Hornhelm, and I'm back again with another presentation from the Dwarven Vault, and today we have a, well, quasi-monster review. And I say quasi-monster review because these are actually items, and they come to us from the original Deities and Demigods for use with Dungeons & Dragons, basic Dungeons & Dragons, advanced Dungeons & Dragons, or what's typically called 1E today. And what we're going to talk about are some of the items from the Chinese mythos. Once again, don't want to get into it. I know there's so many inaccuracies, omissions, etc. with the Chinese mythos. We understand that. We're just looking at what's in the book and how you might be able to use that in one of your dungeons. Now, the Chinese mythos has a bunch of really, really cool items. One of the items that's in there is called the Canon of Changes. It's a book. And it's a book that you have to study very intently. It has a very, very cool power, though. It can create any mundane item. Any. Doesn't matter. Up to the DM. And it takes 72 hours of intense reading in here in order to be able to learn the word that you speak to summon that item or to create that item. So, for instance, if it was a rocket ship, you'd have to spend 3 days reading intently and memorizing everything so that you can speak the words to create that rocket ship. You can't do it again for another 72 hours. You don't have to learn it all over again, but you can't speak it again for another 72 hours. Now, this device is only meant to be used by immortals, and they are supposedly the only ones who have the endurance to read this very difficult wording and whatnot for 72 hours straight. And it's straight. No time off for sleeping. But the side effect is that you can create anything. I want a castle. I want a bridge. I want a highway to the next village. You have some pretty interesting options in there in this kind of a book, depending on what the DM allows. And whether or not he's going to enforce things like the immortality or what you might have to give up in order to do this. One very cool item, the Canon of Changes. But it's not the only item that you find in the Chinese mythos. The next item we're going to talk about is called the Dancing Sword of Lightning. Once again, in the book, but it's essentially a dancing sword. However, once per melee round, it can shoot off a lightning bolt. And it'll do, I believe it's 6 to 30 points of damage. No, 5 to 30 points of damage. Obviously, you get a save versus lightning, but even then, half damage could be pretty good. And it can be used every round. There's no limit on charges. Now, the drawback is it's designed for use by demigods and gods or immortals, and in the hands of a mortal person, it just comes across as a normal sword. Once again, in the hands of a DM, you can do this however you want to. These are not limited. There's a bunch of these scattered throughout the mythos in terms of being able to use them. They're not just like 1 or 2 of these built. Very, very cool item. No two ways about it. And one that, once again, you could add it to your dungeon, have some fun with it. But once again, there is more. Or how does that phrase go? Oh, wait, there's more. The next item that we're going to talk about is the fire gems. The fire gems are about a hand-sized gem, and they can shoot fire. Big surprise, right? They can shoot it up to 50 yards, and it does 6 to 60 points of damage. That's a lot of damage. Of course, you get a save. And each of them is not unlimited. They have between 2 and 12 charges each. But, cool item, right? Could you use this in a dungeon? Could you put some in? You could put a room full of them in if you wanted to. But a very, very cool item. One that's really cool to use, and one that would be a lot of fun for your adventuring party to have access to, by whatever means. So that's the fire gem. But wait, there's still more. And of course, the next item on the list is the giant black pearl. No, we're not talking about an oversized pirate vessel or something like that. The giant black pearl is a 3-foot black sphere. And within a 1 mile radius, all earth and wind turbulence is negated. So if you have the ground heaving due to earthquakes or you have high winds, it makes it all go away within a 1 mile radius. It's all it does, and it's not controllable. So wherever this sphere is, it's going to happen. You can't turn it on and off, it just happens. Still, an interesting object for your party to puzzle out if you put it within a dungeon trying to figure out what's going on. So, another cool item from the Chinese mythos. But wait, there's still even more. And this next item is really cool. It's called the Iron Wand. And the Iron Wand is something that can take anything that's invisible and make it visible. And that's within a 30-foot range. So any invisible object, if the Iron Wand gets within 30 feet of it, it becomes visible. It also can make one specific item disappear as if it were dust of disappearance. On top of that, it also acts as a staff of striking. If you strike somebody with it, it does like 3 to 18 points of damage, and it has unlimited charges for that function. Last but not least, it can be extended up to 100 feet in length and roughened on the outside to use as a climbing pole. That's a pretty cool item. And it's one that, once again, that you can work into a dungeon and have it available for your players as a potential treasure and so forth, which is really difficult and different for them to figure out. Kind of a fun thing to throw in there. But you know what? We're not done yet. There's still more. And this next one is called the Jade Scepter of Defending. As long as the user holds on it and holds it and concentrates, it will defend them from every normal material weapon. It'll knock arrows out of the air, it'll force swords away, etc., etc. But you got to fully concentrate on it. And while you're doing so, no other actions can be contemplated. None whatsoever. You can't even think about it. But during the time that you're holding it, it'll defend you from any material weapon. Pretty darn cool. Once again, a nice item to integrate into a dungeon, have somebody find, try and figure out, especially if you're doing some kind of a dungeon that is themed along the Chinese mythos from what is shown here in Deities and Demigods. Very cool. And finally, we're on to the last of the cool items that they talk about here in Deities and Demigods. They're only 1 foot in diameter, and there's only 25 of these that exist. And the head of the Chinese mythos, Shang Ti, distributes these out to his fellow gods and demigods in a large battle, apparently when they are in mortal danger of being defeated. These can blast out either wind or fire the same way as a robe of the Archmagi would do. And for every 5 charges that you use on it, the user loses 1 hit point permanently. It sounds like a lot, but this is an awful lot of power for very little expenditure of hit points as long as you're high enough level. Obviously, if you only have 5 hit points, it's not such a good deal. But if you have 70 hit points, you can work with this at least through 1 battle. And there's only, like I said, 25 of these available. They do a tremendous amount of damage. And they can be started with a command word from whoever's in control of that one, which you would be told by Shang-Ti or however that was communicated, and could be really interesting in a large battle, or even just finding one of these and trying to figure out what it does. This one is probably the most difficult one to work with because they say very specifically that the gods hand this out, but that's the great thing about it being a DM. You're the master of all space and time. You can make anything happen that you want, and you can work this into a dungeon if you want to. So all of these items have some interesting twists to them that would make them fun to use in a dungeon, and something to consider for what you do in the future. As a DM, we are always looking for things that are part of the canon of the game that get forgotten about. A lot of stuff in Deities and Demigods gets forgotten about. These are really cool items. They would be a lot of fun in a dungeon, but You don't necessarily have to integrate these into the entirety of the mythos and make something run off of that. You can just take the items and use them. These are some pretty cool ones to take and use. So, these are the items of interest from the Chinese mythology within the original deities and demigods. Hope you found this to be interesting and educational, amusing, all that kind of good stuff. If you did, well, please be so kind as to leave us a like. Consider subscribing if you haven't. Drop us a line. Share with your friends. But by all means, please come back and see us again real soon. We thank you so very much for your kind support. Take care, everyone, and remember, dwarves rock!